I want a bridge buddy. Anyone want to be my bridge buddy? Hi, I'm Phil, welcome to my channel where I like to talk about all the geeky pop culture that I like and consume. Things like Doctor Who and Red Dwarf and the MCU and Star Trek. So, if you like any of that stuff, please do hit that subscribe button down below. We're approaching the end of season 2 of Lower Decks now. I think there's 10 episodes, although I'm not sure, which will make this the penultimate episode because this is episode 9. And I will say that I like the way they seem to be incorporating a little bit of story arc elements with the overarching plot, but very subtly. It's not dominating in this episode. It's just kind of there. For most of the episode, we don't even realise that it connects in to an overarching plot that we've seen from the beginning seasons of the beginning season even of Lower Decks. So I like that, and just overall, this was a really fun episode. There will be spoilers, so if you haven't seen the episode, go away, watch it, and come back, and then watch this review. Don't forget to come back. Would hate for you to miss out my thoughts. But I had a really good time watching this episode. I loved seeing the various other races and other ships and other empires, different Lower Decks. Just those little moments that we got to see from the Klingons, the Vulcans, the Pakleds, and the Borg at the end. All very funny. In terms of our usual crew, we didn't get much from anyone other than Boimler, really. There wasn't an awful lot to do. This was really Boimler's episode more than it was anybody else's. Which is fine. It's okay. I mean, Boimler is probably the character that has the most done with him in the show, along with Mariner. So it's always a little bit disappointing when Rutherford and Tendi don't get in much to do. But they're here, and as long as it doesn't do it too much, I'm not too fussed. The plot of this episode starts with the crew having lots of R&R time because they're going to be in warp for a long time, and Boimler wants to do something with his friends, obviously, but they've all got plans already. They've all got plans with bridge officers, or senior officers, and Boimler doesn't have a senior officer buddy to do something with, and he thinks he's missing out on that because it's a good way to getting good books and get promotions. So he wants a bridge buddy too. You know, Rutherford's going off with is it Billups first of all, head of engineering, but then later on we also see him with Shax. He's got 2 officer buddies. Obviously Tendi's going with I always forget her name, the cat doctor person, head medical officer, forgotten her name. She's got plans of her, and Mariner, against her wishes, is being made to spend time with her mum, the captain. So Boimler goes on a mission to try and find his own bridge buddy, and it doesn't go particularly well. There are various scenes throughout this episode where he's approaching people and trying to bond with them, and it not going well at all. First of all, I've forgotten his name again. The new head of security, that we don't know if he's still head of security or not, but him. The one that always speaks whose race always speaks in metaphor, Boimler messes up by using the wrong metaphor and basically insulting his weight. And then in a pottery class, he tries to befriend Shax and asks him if he learned how to do pottery and Bajor, which throws him into a wild fury, and he stands up, throws his pottery down, and is screaming at him, saying, "You think I had time for anything other than resisting? Fighting fascism is a full-time job," and he lunges at him, and Rutherford has to hold him back. That was probably the funniest one. I did like that. I also like the fact that Rutherford and Shax's bond here, he's still evident from when Rutherford went and joined Shax in security for that one episode, and he became part of the Bear Pack, because he still refers to him as Papa Bear. There's still this bond there, you know, once a member of the Bear Pack, you are always a member of the Bear Pack, and I like that they're still maintaining that, and they've still got that closeness there. That's nice. Boimler nearly kills himself using some hover boots when both the Doctor and Tendi are climbing a rock face. He comes up and hovers like Spock does in Star Trek 5, I want to say 5, but it doesn't go well for him, and his boots short out, and he falls and crashes and hurts himself. Nice reference there to a Star Trek movie. And then finally he he kind of enters a turbo lift with where Rutherford and a couple of other ensigns are there, and they're all chatting about surfing, and he tries to get in on the conversation, and they mistakenly think that he's saying he's also from Hawaii, because apparently they are all from Hawaii, and he's initially awkward about it, and he's like, and eventually goes along with it. Because they invite him to do some surfing and hang out on the beach, and he's finally achieved what he wanted to achieve there. Of course, it's not that simple, and we'll get back to that. But I did like that. That was you could kind of see where that was going, but it was very funny. I love the little, as I said, snippaways to other lower decks on other ships. Here we get Klingons initially, where we get a lower decks Klingon who wants to become first officer because he hears that one of the current first officer is going to be killed or mutiny or something like that, and he wants to be there to be the new first officer. We also get the Vulcans, a Vulcan ship where there is a lower decks who is showing a bit of emotion, working on instinct, and her rest of her lower decks colleagues do not like that and report her to the captain, and she gets reprimanded for that. She's working on projects rather than that she hasn't been assigned to, and while she tries to argue from a logical standpoint that it's the logical thing to do, she also uses words like "I had a gut feeling" and "instinct," very un-Vulcan words. So we've got these two sort of mirroring plots going on other ships about their lower decks, and it was interesting to see how lower decks are on other ships. And eventually the Klingon ship comes into contact with the Pakleds. Now we've mentioned before the Pakleds seem to be being set up as like the main reoccurring villain on this show, which kind of makes sense because it's a comedy show and they're a very funny villain. But here we discover something. We discover that all this time, every time they've shown up and we've been wondering, how have they gotten all this advanced equipment and stuff, we find out that it's because the Klingons, this particular Klingon captain, has been supplying them with weaponry. And so this is the story arc element I mentioned, where the Pakleds have been repeatedly showing up from the first series to this next season, this second season, and they've been showing up a few times now, and they've kind of, there's this ongoing mystery of how they've become a bit more powerful and have got a bit more weaponized, despite them being, on the whole, quite stupid and not very intelligent. And this is how this particular captain has been giving them Klingon weaponry. Of course, the Pakleds being the Pakleds, they had tested a single bomb that the Klingons had given them, a really powerful bomb on an asteroid, and then wondered why it didn't work a second time. And the Klingons there, and I just love the Klingon captain's like frustration with these Pakleds. Like, it's a bomb, you use it once. It's not reusable. But the radiation signature that happens when they set off that bomb is picked up by the Cerritos. So they break off their R&R and all go back to battle stations and arrive there where the Pakled ship is and the Klingon ship is. And really nice moment where everybody like piles back onto their stations, and like half the bridge crew are in like Hawaiian shirts and other things, and just all in their casual attire because they've all been doing R&R things. They're not in their proper uniforms. I like that because we often see, I often want everyone walking around a Starfleet ship tends to be in some kind of uniform, and it's like, what? Come on, they have off time. There'll be people running around in casual clothes too, surely. So it's good to see that. The Vulcans have also picked up this signature due to the slightly rebellious one that has lower decks Vulcan that has gut instincts and things. So she's picked it up, and they've arrived there, and so they join the fight as well. So you got the Pakled and the Klingons fighting now, the Cerritos and the Vulcans. The Vulcan lower decks person comes into her own when her and this sort of mirrors how the plots often go in our actual series with the lower decks, with our actual crew that we follow on a weekly basis. Something they do will end up helping save the day in the main plot the bridge crew are facing, and this is what is happening on the Vulcan ship. One of her side projects which she's been doing, which she hasn't been assigned to, ends up saving their lives because it does something to their shield which makes them stops them being blown up. I can't remember the technicalities of it, but that's the gist of it. Meanwhile, on the Klingon ship, the lower decks guy is very frustrated with his captain. Now, he's been made second officer, but after finding out what the captain has been doing and supplying the Pakleds in order to manipulate and destabilize the Federation, in order to provoke a war, this lower decks Klingon's not happy with this. This is an unhonourable way to fight battles. He's all for taking on potentially the Federation, but when that's initially suggested, but the fact that it would be done through the Pakleds is unhonourable, and he basically fights his captain and kills his captain, I think. Or no, maybe he doesn't kill him, because he mentions that the High Council will have to deal with him later. So he stabs him anyway, and he's laying there bleeding on the floor, and takes over, and he becomes the captain, and then he flies off back to the Klingon homeworld. So we get 2 triumphant first lower decks from 2 other ships, who we can cheer on just like we do our own lower decks crew. We do also briefly see the Pakleds lower decks. It cuts to them, and they're just kind of sitting there, not doing anything. One of them goes, "I'm hungry." The other one goes, "You should eat something." And that is it. They're just... That's all we get from them. So together the Vulcans and Starfleet defeat the Pakleds, and all is well, and the Cerritos, the captain of the Cerritos, goes, "Well, I need to report this to Starfleet." I want to see where this goes. I really hope that there's some more to this plot, this whole Klingon working with the Pakleds thing. This develops. Maybe some tensions between the Klingon Empire now. We might see what happens there. But I hope this continues, and this isn't just like cut it off. This is the end of the Pakled story. I hope there's more to this, and I hope the Pakleds stay involved, because they're always funny to see. And I hope that the Klingons, there's some kind of tension. I don't want it to break out into full-scale war between the 2 of them or anything, but I want there to be some kind of like diplomatic tensions which we can explore through the Cerritos, maybe, that the Cerritos gets assigned to some diplomatic mission or something like that going on from here. And what happens with this lower decks captain Klingon, was lower decks, now Captain Klingon. I want to see him again and find out what happens there as well. Also, the Vulcan, as punishment for, even though she saved the day, she's still regarded as a rogue element, thinking too much on gut instinct, using emotions too much. So she is reprimanded by her thanked by her captain for saving the day, and then reprimanded by him and saying that she's being reassigned and being assigned to a Starfleet vessel. Now, we don't know what Starfleet vessel she's been assigned to, but imagine if she's assigned to the Cerritos and we get a new lower decks person on the Cerritos, a Vulcan. That could be interesting. I'd be up for seeing that. Boimler, during the kerfuffle, during the battle, has admitted to the other ones, Ransom, the second in command, and the other 2 ensigns, that he actually isn't from Hawaii, because he doesn't want to die in a Hawaiian shirt. And it transpires that none of them are actually from Hawaii. The other ensigns also made it up to impress Ransom, and Ransom admits that he once made it up to impress, when he was an ensign, a senior officer, and it just kind of stuck, so he had to stick with it. So that's lovely message there. But then the others realize they're all from moons. A couple of them from Earth moon, one of them from a Benzonian moon, I think. So they then bond on that. And Boimler is once again left out. But he does get a bit of a nice ending, because back in the bar towards the end, he's been a bit depressed about this whole situation and how he doesn't have a bridge buddy. And a cadet comes up to him and says that Ransom had suggested that the cadet come and talk to him because Boimler is the most organised person and he's really good at his job, so he should get a few pointers from Boimler. And that really cheers Boimler up. And again, I think it's emphasising that Boimler has really grown since that beginning season and that first few episodes. We've seen this progression, and he's growing into a really competent officer. And it will, again, I've said this before, but it'll be interesting to see where it goes from here. And then finally, I can't not mention the last other vessels lower decks we get to. During the closing credits, we cut to a Borg ship and the Borg's ship's lower decks, which is, of course, just Borg drones hibernating in their cubicles. And that's it. and the credits roll over this. Just kind of like, got the eerie hum in the background. Credits are rolling. The Borg aren't moving. They're just standing there. And it goes on for a really long time, but it works so well. As an ending gag, it's great. So I really enjoyed this episode, and I really liked seeing what the lower decks were like on other ships. I thought there were some good story arc elements rolled into this in a show that isn't particularly heavy on story arcs. It did it in a way that didn't feel like it was betraying the story of the week concept that this has, or the comedy concept that this show has, but it still felt interesting. It still felt that there was somewhere else for it to go. So really looking forward to seeing where that goes. I was a bit disappointed we didn't get much from the rest of the lower decks, but to be honest, I don't know what you could have crammed in here. It might have felt a bit too crammed if you'd started including those as well. So just focusing on Boimler was fine. We got a little nice moment with Mariner as well, where she, after being forced to hang out with her mum when it's all over, she's sort of said, yeah, I had fun. And there's a nice little bonding moment between the two of them there, so that's nice. I think, unfortunately, Tendi has the shorter shrift, because even with Rutherford, we get that moment with him, and Shaxx, just him referring to him as Papa Bear, he's just a nice little moment to check in on where he's at. And while we do get a moment with Tendi and the Doctor, there wasn't really anything to it other than them commenting on what Boimler was doing, so she again got a bit of the short shrift in this episode. But overall, I really enjoyed it. It was funny. There were some nice moments. It was great to see Boimler, again, showing how competent he is and being rewarded for that at the end. What did you think of this episode? Let me know in the comments below, and I will be back. I think it's the season finale next week. Not 100% sure, but I think it is. I'll be back for that then. See you then. Goodbye.